Hi again and welcome to the channel. Let's watch another cool episode of Herald Tribune World Youth Forum. What is that old forum? Well, you should watch this video showing above for that. In this episode, teenage foreign delegates are discuss about Introduction to America and participated following students: Adolfo Jose Crosa of Argentina, Rafia Ayub of Pakistan, Kaarina Honkapohja of Finland, Tetteh-Churu Quao of Ghana. As usual, presenter of the discussion is lovely Mrs. Helen Height-Waller. Let's see the video.
Adolfo Jose Crosa of Argentina, Mr. Tetteh-Churu Quao of Ghana, Miss Kaarina Honkapohja of Finland, and Miss Rafia Ayub of Pakistan. And here is your moderator, Helen Height-Waller.
I haven't seen the stuff with the host family show. I'm hoping that will be very good. I'm smiling because of what Nee said when we were talking about Dad before he came here. Now, I think I quote you rightly when you said people who are too big and stout, massive organisms with very bad tempers. You're going to get a chance to tell us why you said that, Nee, but first let's let Rafia go on. Rafia, you were telling us what your image of America was before you came here.
Yes. Well, I thought America was a big, beautiful country, but the people all were millionaires, and they had oil in their backyards, and all the members of the family owned a car, and they had at least 3 televisions in their house. And, well, about the teenagers, I thought, well, they were a bit wild, I should say. They were never sober. That they'd be doing the rock and roll in the streets, and the boys would be in jeans and carrying a knife around with them.
From where did you get your ideas?
Well, mostly I got them from movies and the magazines and from the American teenagers in Pakistan.
Oh, that's similar to mine. I picked most of my ideas from the movies and comics, and then, well, just by talking with people who were head and heels in love with America.
Oh, yes.
People who were just American crazy. They wanted to know everything about America. I had a lot of ideas from them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how could people be head and heels in love with America and think that
well,
we were massive organisms with very bad tempers?
There are people in Ghana who are very much impressed by, especially the young people are really interested in their way of dressing. They like the jeans and the gay shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that type of people.
Well, but where does this other one come from? That's what I want to know.
Oh, well, we've been reading about basketball players who are 7 feet. And then, well, an American boy who is 14, maybe as high as tall as, let's say, 6'3". Well, I've seen some myself. And back in Ghana, because I was very big and tall, they used to say that, well, I look more like an American.
Look like an American?
But where does the bad temper come in?
Oh, well, I got that from the movies, too. When you see Adolfo in the film, as soon as he's annoyed, he just shoots his pistol. He's never tolerant, you know.
What about you?
About my image, you mean? Well, maybe I shouldn't speak about what I think about the United States people, I mean, because, of course, I think that Latin America and the United States are quite alike, I mean, in their customs and their way of being. And maybe you are more interested in knowing about what we think of the United States as a nation. And, of course, it has been a matter that has been discussed quite a lot the last time. Really, in Latin America, I'll speak as a Latin American, not only as an Argentinian, I'll try to. When we speak of the United States, we used to call it everywhere, I mean, even in conversation, we call it the great northern nation, and we really feel it, I think. We have quite a number of points in common. I think one of the most important is that, for example, Latin American nations and the United States have had a great problem during their history. It was the fact that they had great extensions of desert lands with any population, and of course we got that population in the same way, mainly by European immigration, and of course that's why our population is so alike, with the same customs, and most of the time thinking the same way. If you look back at history, you come to the conclusion that
Well, I'd like to ask you, if it's that, why was Nixon treated like that when he went to your country?
Yes.
Well, the United States, in their relations with Latin American countries, just as any other nation would have done, I think the United States did what any other nation would have done in their places. in his place. I mean, I have a thought most of the time, maybe in a selfish way, about their own interest and not thinking and not considering very much the interests of the other nations. So there is...
Excuse me, let's come back to this point about whether any nation does think more of their own interests than somebody else's. But first, I wanted to find out what you were really meaning when you said the impressions that you got from Americans in Pakistan and how that gave you your image of America.
Well, you see, the teenagers would be going about on the road doing the rock and roll, and they'd be always in jeans. You'd never see them dressed properly. And in their homes, you'd see they'd be arguing with their parents on everything, every small matter. I mean, I had a neighbor, I'd go to her house, and the only thing I would hear was, she said, "But Mom, why can't I go out?" I would hear nothing. And, well, I had imagined there was segregation all over the America. This was because, first of all, my parents were traveling in the States, and they were in the South, and they stopped at a restaurant, and they refused to serve them. Well, this was incredible that they said that they were colored people, and they just didn't serve them.
Are there many American teenagers in Pakistan?
Yes, there are many, because there are many foreigners there.
And tell me, did those American teenagers in Pakistan just behave in the same way that boys do in pictures, for example?
Pardon? I didn't quite understand.
Yes. Those American teenagers that are living in Pakistan act in the same way that the American teenagers do in pictures, in the same way they...
Yes, exactly in the same way.
I don't know, they are wearing knives and revolvers over the streets or something like that.
Well, you see, the boys, the American boys, they don't dress properly. You'll always find them in a pair of dirty jeans, anything like that. Well, I was telling you about the segregation. Well, we had new neighbors just living nearby us, and their children often used to come over. And
were they American?
Yes, they were American. And after sometimes I noticed that they didn't come over, and I met one of them and asked them. And that small boy, he said, "My mother told me you're bad, you kidnap us." And I was so bitterly hurt because I just couldn't understand this. This is what they teach their children, and this is what the impression they get of us, that we're going to kidnap them.
Do you think those American teenagers are different from the American teenagers you've seen here so far?
Oh, yes. I mean, first of all, in their dress, they are very different. I mean, I didn't find anyone rock and rolling in the street.
In the winter. Is it because we are in the winter?
No, not in the winter.
Excuse me, Rafia. Those American teenagers that are living in Pakistan now, for example, what are they doing there? Why are they living in Pakistan?
Well, you see, the embassies, America has its embassy there. Well, all the people who are the diplomats, they are there, and they have their families with them.
And do you have them attending the same schools with you?
No, they're not. They attend a different, they have an American school.
Private school?
Yeah, there's this school especially for the American people who come over, for the teenagers.
Well,
they don't attend.
I guess I have the same image of America. Before I came, I really thought that that money has spoiled them. As to the way the Americans behave in Finland, it's almost the same as Rafia told us.
Well, also from my observations in Ghana, I knew that they were all the time living in luxury. Nearly every American I thought had a car, and they were just interested in living in huge, comfortable houses, and then, adorning their homes with gadgets. They wanted everything. Yes, gadgets. Yes. They wanted everything so cheap and easy.
I'm surprised.
And then in their way of life, in connection with the children, I thought discipline was so slack. And so far I've had some grounds to justify that. And then
tell us what they are, will you?
Oh, well, when I went to the schools, for example, whilst the teachers were teaching, some of the boys were cracking jokes at the back of the class.
Cracking
jokes?
Jokes.
Yes.
I found the same thing in our schools. They had the backs towards the teacher, and they were fiddling around, and the girls were putting lipstick while the teacher was talking to them.
We do have some girls combing their hair in class. We don't have that sort of thing in Ghana.
Well, really, concerning my impressions from school, they are in some way different. I think that boys are mischievous all over the world, not only in the United States, and they play tricks and just all over the world also. Now, of course, I'm surprised at the fact that you consider the United States people so different from yours. I wonder how can you get to that conclusion. I think that people more or less are a lot the same all over the world. They may act differently, but you seem to consider them so awfully different from yours. I don't know how you.
I didn't consider them so different from us because we were all human beings, but our social setup was so different. So, in actual fact, the effects of the social changes were quite different in themselves. So, a typical Ghanaian boy was quite different from an American.
Well, I'd like to say, you see the education. I found that the American teenagers don't know much about the world. I've been writing to pen pals in America, and they've asked me the most strange questions, which really make me furious sometimes. And like they asked me, do you live on trees, or does the sun shine in Pakistan? And another said, Rafia, I don't know where Pakistan is, but I think it's somewhere in Africa. Could you tell me
Now,
where
tell
it
me,
is?
Rafia, this is the majority of the United States students?
Those are the ones who wrote to me, and this was all over America. It wasn't from one restricted place that I could say that they didn't know anything.
They wrote to you? In what way? Why?
You see, I write to them, and I'd like to correspond with them to learn more about their country and their
You
education.
do that.
And they reply back, and we just correspond by letters.
Well, I also had a few pen pals in there. Well, through the
excuse me.
a few pen pals.
I don't know.
Right, sir. Well, you get your pen pal, say, okay, I live in...
pen pals.
pen pals.
Somebody in another country that you exchange letters with.
I exchange letters.
I see.
I had two pen pals, one in Kentucky and one in New York. And well, through their questions, I got to know that they were so ignorant about Ghana. Almost everybody was surprised to know that I had never seen a lion.
Now, those...
Wait, let him finish
yes,
it all.
They had so many big ideas about Africa in general. Even they couldn't believe that we put on suits and we had cars, hotels, everything, self-service, so many departmental stores. They didn't believe all those things, you know. They had so many big ideas about Africa.
If they had learned some geography, I don't mean they should learn it or if they don't like it, but just learn about the other countries, they wouldn't make such a mistake.
I don't think their geography covers a very wide field. Because when I came over here, I was surprised to find some people telling me that they had never heard the name of Ghana. That was a very big surprise indeed for me. And I don't think their geography lessons cover very much wide field.
Kaarina, help us out here. Do people know enough about Finland? What's your experience been?
Well, I think that, when I went to school, there was a girl who asked if Finland and Thailand are neighboring countries.
Finland and Thailand.
and somebody asked me if it was a British colony and so on.
Well, now, I'm just remembering an evening, the second evening that you were all in the United States when we were together. What did you know about Pakistan then, Kaarina? Why don't you tell us what you know about Pakistan?
Oh, well, I really don't know very much. I know something about politics and, I don't know about your religions and so on. It's very little. I'm sorry.
Well, I must confess here that I also knew very little about Pakistan. I only knew that they've been having some clashes with India on their borders, and then, they've had a new government, a dictator perhaps. They didn't find democracy suitable.
Yes.
I only knew that much.
That's quite
Now,
right.
there's something that I really got from all these kind of questions. As soon as I got to New York, someone asked me what language did we speak in Argentina. Of course, I was shocked. I did not like that. And but then, on the following day, I had to ask a delegate what language did they speak in his own nation. So I realized that is not only a lack of America, but it may, of course, maybe a
So
general...
we are judging awfully much Americans and we are the same.
On languages, Adolfo, have you had any experience with foreign language teaching since you've been here? Oh, you've been here too short a time, I suppose, to have had a chance.
No, in the first week I was at school, since Monday up to today, I have attended a Spanish class in the high school where I go. Now, it's an advanced class of Spanish.
Where is that, Hewlett, Long
yes,
Island?
in Hewlett,
Hewlett.
Long Island. It's an advanced class of Spanish, and it is quite significant the fact that the boys and girls who go there, the girls and boys, go there just because they like the language, and so they are not obliged to go there. And they have been studying Spanish for 4 years, and they know quite a great deal about the language. They pronounce it quite correctly. They have a very good teacher, wonderful teacher, and they are even interested in literature. And I am afraid when they begin speaking about Spanish literature, for example, because my knowledges are always crumbling, and I know so much that they make me, be a little afraid of the questions they may put to me about that subject. But I think that, I don't know if the way of teaching languages is the same all over the United States, but at least in that class with 10 students and that teacher is very
in
good.
spite of the criticism I've made about the geography, I must say I attended the French class and I was very, very impressed. The teacher had just a wonderful accent and the pupils really were very, very good. And I've been taking French for 4 years, and I thought they were as equally good as me. What I've done, they were doing the same thing.
But come back to this other point. I'm sorry, Nee, go ahead.
Well, I was also lucky to make that observation. Whilst I was in Ghana, I had to do French, not because I love that language, but because, well, it was a university requirement. But here in America, it appears the people have got interest in the subject. They all want to speak it. I, for example, never took oral French, you see. I had to just learn the language because it was a university requirement. But here they've got real interest in the subject. That's a great difference.
It's their first foreign language, Nicholas. English is mine, isn't it yours?
I mean, is it
yes,
compulsory for you to take?
No,
Yes.
no. Well, in Ghana, English is the official language, and that's also a means of instruction. But, well, in subjects like French and German, let's say, one has to do that because the university requires him to. You see?
I want to come back to Rafia's point a minute, or Adolfo's point. You were talking, or one of you was talking about changes in the government in Pakistan. What do you know about Argentina, for example?
Well,
Tell us, what countries are contiguous, for example? Where is it?
At
Well,
least the
I should
continent.
say I really don't know much about it.
Well, at least where it is. It's in Africa, Asia, I mean. In what continent?
In Europe, I think.
Oh, I'm lucky on this point. You see, I had to do some world geography so that I knew a lot about Argentina. When I met Adolfo for the first time, I asked him whether he brought some beef.
It's in South America now.
I knew they can't a lot of meat.
Mistake after I've criticized the Americans not knowing anything
the
about
same mistake
geography.
I made. I was impressed when someone did not know what language we speak in Argentina, and then I realized that they did not know what language they speak in some other country. I have to ask. You see, you learn.
There's never any monopoly on international ignorance, I guess, particularly
I
about
don't
other
think
people's
so.
countries. Adolfo, I was looking at you, and I saw you with your eyes protest when Rafia said that the change to dictatorship in her country was because democracy didn't work.
Yes, I think she. Well,
That was,
I don't
was it
agree
you
with
who said that, or
her,
was it
of course.
Kaarina?
Who said something about dictatorship?
Well, you see, we do have a dictator at present. We had democracy for 10 years and it didn't work, and the army...
Excuse me, Rafia, when did you get your independence?
In 1947.
1947. Yes, go on, go on.
Yes, and so for 10 years we've had democracy and it didn't work, and then now that the army has taken over, already the conditions are so much better. And here now we have to have faith in one person. Not that a man owns some land and the people vote, he thinks he's the landlord, and he votes for them. Here we at least we have a faith in our president, and we know
Now,
he's going to
what
vote
do
for
you
us.
say? What do you call that that better situation? Why do you say that the situation is better now than, I don't know, some months ago?
You see, we were having our general elections, and everyone was aware that the politicians were bribing the people to vote for them, and everyone knew it wasn't going to be fair. There were frequent cabinet changes, and the deputy speaker in East Pakistan was killed. Now, could you expect anything like
No,
this
no,
in
no, excuse
Pakistan?
me. What do you say about
I
being
don't think,
killed?
we
Excuse me, Amy. What do you say about being killed?
Yes, you see, they were having, they were discussing something, and they just got so rowdy in the room, and someone picked up a chair and just hit him, and there he was. He died in the hospital.
You mean that your democratic system hasn't got I don't know, a police force or something to put things in order when they are not in order?
You see, when 80% of our people are illiterate, and they just didn't understand the constitution that was made in 1955. The people just didn't understand, and you see, they were smuggling and black marketing, and food was...
I don't think we should make much fuss about this. I don't consider any political setup as a dogma. Every political setup
Please,
must...
will you please a little more slowly? I don't
Okay,
understand.
right. Every political setup must suit the environment and the people. So that, let's say in Pakistan, you see that most of the people are illiterate.
Yes,
Yes.
80%.
80%. And then perhaps they've acquired the habit of depending on one man, that is a
Yes.
leader. So that in such a situation, dictatorship may solve their problems, you see. But here too, it may be very detrimental, you see.
Well, what about Ghana? What's the percent of literacy?
Oh, well, in Ghana, let's say about 65 to 70% of the people are illiterate. But democracy is working all right. Because,
It is working
well,
all right.
When we
Well,
have...
why? Why is working all right in Ghana and cannot work all right in
Because,
Pakistan?
well, we've got that medium of announcement. You know, in Ghana, all the political parties have got propaganda vans.
You're speaking
And,
too fast. I didn't understand the last two
I'm
sentences.
sorry. Well, in Ghana, all the political parties have got propaganda vans. And when elections are coming on, for example, they go throughout the country. They don't speak English to the people because they are illiterate, you see.
I see.
Well, they tell them the news in their own tribal languages. so that in actual fact there is no difficulty of getting them to
But I'd
understand.
like to ask you, how would one person know that, well, this fellow is good and I must vote for him and this fellow is bad? I mean, if the people are illiterate, how do they understand your constitution?
And tell me, and why have you to oblige that people to trust in only one man, without giving those people the choice to choose their own governors? You had just imposed a government, a fellow to direct them, and you don't care for their opinion at all. I think that you should consider their opinion.
When they're illiterate, at least they know one person, but here they're illiterate and whoever gives them some money, they have to earn their living, the poor people, they vote for them.
Do you think that, well, you would justify just any kind of dictatorship because you think that any dictator would do the best for his people?
Well, I think dictatorship is good for Pakistan for the present. I know a dictator may become so powerful that in the future he just becomes so powerful he won't.
I agree with you. I give Kaarina a chance. Then we'll come back.
Well, I agree with you because democracy hasn't worked very well in Finland, and just now I think that dictatorship would be very good for Finland.
In what way democracy did not work very well in Finland?
You see, we have now a terrible economical situation and a lot of communists and a lot of unemployment and so on. And that's because our democracy, I think. And now we need a man, a kind of dictator we could
What
trust.
for? What for do you need a dictator? Just can't a democratic elected president do the same thing, or prime minister?
No, president has almost nothing to do with that.
Why not?
Well, we have a prime minister and president. The prime minister does.
Well, then the prime minister, why not?
I'd like to ask
really
you,
aware of their civil rights.
you're talking so much about it. What do you have against a person being a dictator? Why are you so against dictatorship?
All right. Now you have a dictator. He's working all right for Pakistan or for his people. How do you prevent him from working badly towards Pakistan? How do you prevent him from becoming a real dictator? And,
What do you remember from the Perón regime? Perón was dictator of Argentina for a while.
For a while, 12 years.
What do you remember about it?
Well, really. For example, you had the case of Perón. He had all the power in his hand. He could do the best for the nation. He did the worst. Now, how could we prevent him from making the worst? Well, only making the revolution we did after standing him 12 years.
Well,
now,
maybe he's right.
Now, how can you prove me that your dictator is going to behave all right and you are not going to have any problem?
Well, we have our faith in him. I
Well,
mean,
but
and
you have
I said,
faith-
as I already said, I just wanted for the present.
Now, most Argentine people always had faith, at the beginning had faith in Perón. Now they don't trust Perón anymore.
But you look, it had happened for a long time ago. Maybe people were
I
happy
mean-
when you had Perón.
Yes,
weren't
that's
they?
quite
They
right.
were happy.
Doctor.
I
They were
want to
happy.
strike this point home. I don't think, as I've said already, no political setup is a dogma. So that if
Yes, I know that.
if dictatorship wasn't good for Argentina, it doesn't mean that it
It
wouldn't
won't
be
be
good
good
for
for
Pakistan.
Yes, it means
Because,
that.
uh-huh.
It means that. Because if you
Let him
just...
finish his point, then you come back to yours.
Let's say the people of Pakistan have acquired the habit of depending on one man. Right? If they are educated, they are aware of their civil rights.
No.
They may have a dictator for the meantime to solve their problems. But in that case, if there is a form of legal machinery, something that could be, let's say, a constitutional provision, that would be able to check the dictator, let's say, after a
Well, then he's not a
stipulated
dictator.
time.
If you put some limitation to his power, he stops being a dictator, I think. I want to
Well-
make clear what my idea of a dictator is. A dictator is a fellow who has got all the power in his hand, and you cannot stop him anywhere and in any moment. You see? So you cannot say, well, now, that's enough. Now you go away and we'll manage by ourselves.
You mean?
If you just put some limitation to his power, he stops being a dictator. You see what I mean?
No, but listen, how do you know that he won't work for the good of the country? How are you so sure that when he becomes too powerful, he won't just think about the country? And
He's a human being.
Now, I want to ask you something. The world has had a lot of dictators up to now. What dictator deserves the gratitude of his people?
No one.
You try to find one. A dictator with the meaning I gave to dictatorship, all the power in one man's hand.
No, that's not good. I mean, not in one's hand. I agree with you.
Well, then he stops being a dictator. If you
And
just
he becomes
put some
what?
limitation to his power, he stops being
But
a
that's
dictator.
your way to understand a dictator. It was
Well,
a-
that's the point in which I discuss dictatorship. Now, if you just put some limitation to his power, he stops being a dictator, and you just come into a kind of democracy. Why not? In democracy, you have the power divided in three powers: the president, the Congress, and the courts. Now, one power counterbalances with the other. I mean, if the president wants to take too much power, the Congress is going to stop him. For example, the president in democracy cannot deal with judicial matters because there is a court who says, no, wait a minute, this is our job, not yours. Now, in democracy, you put limitations to a man's power, to the president's power, or to the Congress power, or to the court's power. In dictatorship, you don't. Now, if you put some limitation, I think you're just getting some sort of democracy, good or bad democracy, but democracy.
Well, Nee, what's your point? You were
Well,
defending dictatorship a moment ago. Where do you stand really?
Well, really, I'm in the middle. I'm saying that, no political setup, a political setup may be good for another country, but not good for another, for
Excuse
the other.
me, I want to
So
discuss
that-
just those words. A political setup who doesn't respect, I don't know, the elemental rights every person has, would be bad for every nation, I think. Dictatorship would be bad for every nation, the kind of dictatorship I was speaking about, excuse me, Kaarina, because it doesn't respect the elemental rights everyone has.
Think of our situation a little.
Now tell me, can you say that a man has the right to speak and to think because he doesn't read? Do you think that all the 60 or 70% of illiterate population in Ghana shouldn't have any right to think and to choose their own governors just because
Well, if
they
they
don't
don't
read?
know
well,
anything
we
about
may
them,
have-
what are they supposed to, who are they supposed to vote for if they're illiterate? They don't know anything about their own constitution. They
In
don't
what
understand.
situation would you justify dictatorship in Africa, for example?
Okay, I will put it this way. If there is a country in Africa where the people are illiterate, a greater percentage of the people are illiterate, and where they have acquired the habit of depending on one man, just traditionally, well, here, dictatorship may be the only means of solving their problems. Because, if you put illiterate people in parliament, what are they going to say, really? A chap who perhaps understands only the vernacular. What is he going to do in parliament?
What did you say that?
A chap who only understands the vernacular, that is his tribal language.
Yes, I see.
I see.
What is he going to do in parliament, for example?
That's just right. Now, what do you have to say against that?
Now, I have to say something. I think, and this is an idea I have fixed in my mind, that a man should never give up certain rights he has, even if he doesn't speak. If that man cannot read and write, that man has
We've got
the...
to end on that. I'm sorry, Adolfo, our time's up. Next week, we're going to have that discussion you wanted on religion. There'll be students from 4 countries, a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, and a Buddhist.
That would be more interesting.
And then...
Young Worlds has been produced by WCBS-TV with the New York Herald Tribune Youth Forum.
All right, you can go on as long as you want. I don't think you can...
Travel arrangements for our guests were made by Pan American World Airways and Trans World Airlines.
Well, think of our situation. Immigration always coming.
This has been a presentation of the WCBS-TV Public Affairs Department.